Jonathan Majors, Idris Elba, Regina King, Zazie Beetz, and Lakeith Stanfield. When you have a cast this stacked, I have to talk about it. So I'm gonna give you my thoughts and reactions to the new film, The Harder They Fall, right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. You know, we've been in sort of a renaissance lately for African American films, black films. For a while there, the only type of stories we would get to tell are the coming of age gang stories like Menace to Society or Boys in the Hood or Crooklyn and all that type of stuff. Spike Lee sort of had his own lane. But it was all very kind of centralized on the pain of the African American and the black plight in America. So post Black Panther, we've been getting to play in some wheelhouses that we don't normally get to play with. We've had some action films, we had some thrillers, some horror stuff. It's been interesting to sort of get a run of the gamut and play in these many different genres that we don't normally get to play in. So it is not lost on me that we get to play in a space that we didn't normally get to play in before. I am aware, and I am old enough to know of the Mario Van Peebles posse from '93, so I'm aware of that. And Rosewood, although that dealt back again with black plight, but this one is something brand new, a little fresh. But as fresh as it is, as far as the casting, it is still very much a Western, which is a dying breed for reasons that I will get into shortly. What is cool about this film off top is that it does deal with some historical figures that I hope that people will do more research on and go look up and find out more about these characters, because they all actually exist. This story that we're telling is very fictionalized, and these characters don't look like a one-to-one to whatever was depicted in that, which I don't have a problem with because this isn't a biopic. This is a sort of a fictionalized, made-up story to kind of that has these characters playing parts within it. A lot like what Quentin Tarantino does with a lot of the stuff that he creates. So no issues with me there, but I know there are some people who have some issues with it. They don't look like one-to-ones. Because it is fictionalized and because of all that, it does get into that sort of heightened reality and heightened violence and heightened sense of dialogue. It feels very much like the people who are responsible for creating this film have watched Christopher McQuarrie and Quentin Tarantino and those likes as they've grown up. It's like, hey, I like to play in that world and do my own version of that without all the damn N-words being scattered out throughout. I'm a huge Quentin fan, but those get to be a lot. And it is not lost on me that there is no N-word. There's almost close to being one said, and then that person is removed from their life. But there are no N-words said in this, and I believe that's very much on purpose. And the director has come out to say as much, is that just because it's a historical piece doesn't mean that you need to go ahead and litter that word all the way throughout it. Now, I go back and forth with that. I think, yes, if you're making an entire black film, if you're doing a lot of the stuff that Quentin does, because it is a fictionalized word, we don't need to have that word in there. When you're making stuff that is like Roots, that word kind of does need to be in there, unfortunately, because that is a part of the story. But when you're making these fun films like this, we don't need to have that word beat into our brain consistently. It doesn't do any good. We are, if people are taught the way that they're supposed to be, which I know is not always the case, we know what our history is, and we don't need to keep having that put on for, because it reinforces to them that that is the only way that they should be seeing us, and I just, it gets messy. So that is why taking the reins of this film and doing something like this is so important. I think it does create a box with a lot of talented cast to play together. That's cast, I didn't mention Delroy, Lindo, like all of that sort of in there together. It's a gumbo of just great talent on the board. A part of a genre, though, that is understandably being removed. There tends to be only one type of Western. There isn't, like, Westerns aren't really going to break the mold. You sort of know what you're getting with the Western. So however you gloss up the skin on it, like you do with characters, you put a different skin on it, it is still a Western. And so as beautiful as this shot, as invigorating as it is to see people who look like me on set, there are a lot of things that this falls into the Westernisms that just, once you've seen one Western, you've kind of seen the majority. I know my dad's going to kill me for saying that, but that is sort of the case. They are all sort of the same. Now, there are some really great ones and there's some really bad ones, and like based on the cast and how you go, like Tombstone is one of the top ones for me. Young Guns you put up there, but then you get You get into all of the ones that Clint Eastwood does. You remember Fistful of Dollars, but then there are so many other films that he's done that you're like, that were in that Western realm, you're like, sure, I guess. And so this is a very simplistic story. It's about revenge, like all Westerns are. And I think when you do that, a lot like a morality play, it kind of can only end one way. Now, sure, you'll have some tweaks and some twists here and there, and sometimes you'll see it coming from a mile away. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a story, there's going to be a lead protagonist who's wronged by a villain. That villain is going to go on to succeed or do something, and then that person's going to have to come back and get revenge on them. That is the story of a Western. It always has been. Bells and whistles, characters, you'll have characters you attach to, characters you don't attach to, but that's always that, and is the meat and structure, skeleton of all of this. And that's what we get here. Doesn't make it a bad film. It just doesn't make it like, oh, this is one of those films that you absolutely have to see. I think it is one of those because we never get to play in this wheelhouse, and we don't get to play in this world. But as a person who has just watched all types of film, if you have always wanted to see people look like you in those films, but still watch them anyway, this isn't going to be new to you. Now, there's going to be an entire audience who never watched a Western or never watched a sci-fi, because most of the sci-fi films don't have people that look like me. Then I get it. This is going to be brand new to you, and you're going to love it. It's like, open up your eyes. And I'd even say do some homework and go back and watch some other Westerns. This one isn't reinventing the wheel of Westerns. It is just putting a very cool sheen on it for people who look like me. But let's get into the cast. Stacked cast, everyone does really well in it. I think for me, the standout is Regina King again. She is killing it. She has this quasi accent that is going on, but she kills it and still is managed to emote. There's a whole sequence with her cutting up an apple while she is talking. That is one of the most riveting scenes that I think this entire film has. Idris is killing it. Idris is very monotone as the big heavy bad until the very end, and there's a sequence that I think he and Jonathan Majors, I would love to see them in other stuff together, because this is very structured and stylized of how they have to interact with in this film. And I'd love to see them do other things, but they're really good together here. And I think Lakeith Stanfield is another standout, but for me, Regina King kills it. The action is really good, to seeing a bunch of African American men and women on horseback. There's a sequence that they have to go to what would be considered a white town, and they even say it in the quotes. It's very stylized, and I dig that. But everything is, the color palette completely changes, which is, I imagine, done on purpose. Whereas the spot where all the African Americans are, the people of color are, it's very colorful and bright, many different variations of color. Where you go to you go to the white place, and it's just white. Maysville, I believe, is what it's called. So it's that's not lost on me. I think the sets, the design, the music notes and cues all make this come together and put it in a big pot of gumbo. It all works. It all comes together well. It's just, I've seen so many Westerns. As a kid who used to watch my dad watch Westerns all the time, I've seen so many of these that I know how this works. The DNA is there. And so it definitely falls into that realm of, this was cool. All these actors are doing great work. It's just, there's a reason the Westerns have gone away. And so it's cool to finally play in that world and do this. And there's even a sort of a hanging chad, if you will, at the end of this film that could say this can continue on. I just don't know if I really want to, because I think this is a great one-off. Cool, I love it. I don't really need to go back to this again. So on my scale of play it again, Sam, hey, I didn't mind that. Once is enough, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. This falls in that, hey, I didn't mind that. And it has nothing to do with the talent, the directors, the music, the cast, all of that. It's because the story of the Western is very blah. And not just this particular Westerns, I mean the genre of Westerns as a whole. And because of that, there isn't much that this cast and this director, all this talent, all this great talent can do to sort of bring it out of the muck of the dying, dead Western genre. But those are my thoughts. Harder They Fall. I still think that if you're a person of color, and one, you've never seen Westerns, check it out. But if you're just a person of color, specifically black, check it out. Because there's just a lot of good talent. If nothing else, if you've seen Westerns and you know how they all work, if nothing else, just to see these people having fun, kind of playing dress up, a world that we never really got to play in before, it's worth checking out just for that alone. What did you guys think about The Harder They Fall? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. I really want us to play in a sci-fi world. I know that's the one genre I think we haven't really touched yet is an all-black sci-fi flick. Somebody does that and show it to me, or let me be in it. I think that's where a lot of things can be sort of broken out of the mold with that. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, you can hit us up at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. This current episode that we're talking all about Eternals. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.